Warning, listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
Welcome back to another episode of Influencers Radio. I remember reading a story about the price of bad bookkeeping in the New York Times. And this article, it pointed out the similarities between being a basketball player and an entrepreneur, really, in how quickly you have to flip between playing offense and defense. At any moment, everything can change. In basketball, it could be something as simple as not realizing your shoe's untied that can have a huge impact on the game. And in business, something as simple as ignoring or neglecting or just not understanding your financials and cash flow can have a huge impact on the score, regardless of how good your product, your service, or how much your customers love you. And the fact is, many entrepreneurs, they're great at what they do, but they're so focused on creating their great products or providing that great service that they just don't give the time or attention to their books. And today, my guest is making a huge difference in the ability for aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners to create and maintain a profitable business. She spent 10 years with one of the world's largest consulting firms, working with Fortune 500 organizations in financial services, insurance, healthcare, technology to improve processes, performance, and profitability. And now she's bringing that success and experience and expertise to help small business owners, entrepreneurs to identify and really put into practice the practical, and I think most important, low stress financial solutions that are going to enable business growth. She's the founder of SMI Financial Coaching and the author of the best-selling book, Small Business Finance for the Busy Entrepreneur, the blueprint for building a solid, profitable business. Please welcome to Influencers Radio, Sylvia Inks. Welcome to the show, Sylvia.
Great. Thank you so much, Jack, for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I am too, because this is something that affects so many small business owners, entrepreneurs, because in the days when you're thinking about starting your business and, you almost romanticize what's going to happen in how you're going to change things and how your product and your service are going to change people's lives. And even people in professional services, doctors that go to school to learn medicine and dentists, they all learn their trade, but get very few practical skills about being an entrepreneur, which is what they ultimately have to do. So what I want to start with is that person that may be really great at what they do, but they're not being good with their finances, or they're just avoiding. I think you probably see a lot of that ostrich head in the sand syndrome, but it can really make or break a business, because there are a lot of smart and successful business owners, and I think it probably, and you can clarify this for me, does it come down to that finances, they can be overwhelmed? I know it's highly stressful, but what is it that makes this something that is so critical but affects so many small business owners?
Yes. Great question, Jack. Yes. I see many entrepreneurs and business owners. They are great at what they do. I mean, we all have our strengths. We're out there. We want to make a difference. We want to deliver our products and our services, but not all of us are good with the numbers. And even for those of us who are good with the numbers, a lot of the business practical, both the business management and the financial management, we didn't actually learn that in school. Like, it's not something that I was taught in college or anything. It's actually, the product of my book is actually a lot of research that I did in starting up my business. So going to seminars, taking courses, going online, talking to CPAs and business lawyers. Like, it's a combination of everything that it was essentially stuff that I researched and put together into my book, because it isn't all out there. So entrepreneurs, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to do, DIY at the beginning. They want to do it all themselves and because they don't have the money. But then all this information is scattered. It took me probably 18 months to gather all this information. And most entrepreneurs, we don't have that time. So my goal was to put all this information together, so to save the entrepreneur time and get to the nuts and bolts of what's really going to make it or break their business.
I think this is probably one of the things that gets thrown into when I get around to it category, right?
Yes.
That so many business owners do. And you mentioned something about how, you don't learn this, but you learn through experience. And it seems like that's when people really get the big lesson, is when something goes wrong. I had a really smart man once tell me, about when my wife and I think we were first married, and he said, you know how to never forget an anniversary? And I asked how, and he said, forget just one. And it seems like that's how you learn the biggest lesson, is when it bites you, in that situation. So is that seem to be when people decide that they need to get around to it, when something bad has happened, or when it's kind of piled up so much that, they're really starting to feel the heat because of their neglect, of their finances?
Yes, you're absolutely spot on, Jack. That's what I see consistently. We don't have the time. I mean, most entrepreneurs, we're hustling. We're spending, our time, on our business, working with our clients, working on the product, and we don't have the time. So we kind of put it on the back burner. And it makes and breaks the business. A lot of the customers and prospects that I see, they're at risk. They've either been audited by the IRS. They've spent over $1,000 already on bookkeepers and CPAs for things that they could have just done correct up front and saved themselves time, stress, money. And oftentimes some of these business owners, because they don't have a buffer of money, because that they're spent when they're being wasteful and spending money when they don't need to, it actually forces them to close the business. I've seen many business owners who have been forced to close their business, even though they were successful at what they did. They had clients that wanted their products or services, but they themselves, because they were cash poor and they were negative, they just couldn't keep it running.
Well, one of the things, let's talk about some of the common mistakes, because I know there's a lot of people that they feel that they're unique, that this is something that they've kind of dug themselves a hole, or they don't want to talk about it or share that they've had this. And I will bet you that probably one of the most common ones, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that when people, I guess you would call it commingle their personal and their business funds. They pay bills out of their personal account, or they take money out of their business account to grab the kids Chick-fil-A or whatever it is. Do you see that as something that's one of the common things that people do that is probably easy not to do?
Yes. Oh my gosh, Jack. This is like the number one thing that a lot of business owners get wrong. There was a survey that came out by one of the banks, and they said about 50% of business owners commingled their personal business assets. Like, no one should ever do that. You open yourself up to, more CPA fees, because if you have everything commingled, they have to look through all your bank accounts. You open yourself up to the IRS looking through both your personal and business assets. Because people a lot of these business owners, they think, like you said, they're unique. A lot of them say, oh, well, I'll get to that when the business gets bigger. Like when I'm more successful, I'm just starting out, so everything's just going to be in one. It's a big mistake, because that ends up causing more problems later, and it just causes a big IRS nightmare and audit nightmare.
Well, that doesn't mean that they have to go out and go to a bank and open some big business, relationship with the bank. Is it just opening up even the simplest, cheapest, separate checking account just so they can keep that separate?
Yes, absolutely. And, honestly, a lot of folks, I think the misconception is that everything's, a lot of these bank accounts, it's going to cost them money. But a lot of the community banks, your local community banks, they are great. I've found that a lot of them, they're so helpful in helping small business owners get off the ground that they actually have either minimum or no fees on their accounts. So it doesn't cost you anything. It's peace of mind. You've got, business banks that are out there that are willing to help you get your business off the ground and as quickly as possible.
Well, let's jump into some common misconceptions, because I'm sure there's a lot of myths and misconceptions around this. And I think one of the first things that people think when they're bootstrapping or starting up the business is and probably even the people that are the most conscious about it, and say, I'll get around to it. They'll say, well, at least let me get the shoebox out so I can throw my receipts in there.
Oh gosh, yes, the shoebox. That's like the worst. That's probably the one that causes almost consistently as small business owners come to me, they're just stressed. They have no idea what to do with the receipts. They've got a stack of receipts and it just sits there and piles up. And a lot of them say just looking at it causes them anxiety. So there's a process. It's simple. You create a process to store those receipts. It's ready when your CPA or the IRS comes and asks you for the receipt. If you've got the process that I've laid out, it's easy. It's there. Even three to 5 years from now, if somebody were to come ask you for the receipt, you have it. And honestly, this shoebox receipt, it's so bad. One of the things that people don't realize is that the ink, if your receipt is printed on thermal paper, that ink will fade. So if you try to open that shoebox up, not even a month later, that paper is going to be blank, like almost illegible. So if you start claiming all these receipts like you see on your credit card or bank statements and say, oh yeah, I'm going to claim all these and send this to my CPA. Well, if the IRS audits you and you can't produce a receipt, you actually get penalized. You end up having to back out that money that you claimed was a business purpose. And then if you can't produce a receipt, then you also get fined, and interest starts from the minute that you should have paid taxes.
So what qualifies as a receipt? Because some people say, oh, well, I'll just download my bank statements or I have my credit card statement that comes in. What's actually qualifying for receipt for small business? Because I think that's where they have a big misconception is that should be good enough. And maybe it is.
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I'm the big believer of, more information is better than not. That way there's not any question that this was a business expense. Because a lot of folks, if you go to Target, you could buy some business supplies, but you could also buy some personal stuff. You could buy clothes for the kids. You could buy, food. And so you don't want to rely on those credit card statements and bank statements because all it's going to say is Target for, $50. Whereas if you have a receipt that shows legitimate business expenses, if it shows, you use paper, or you bought pens or whatever it is for supplies that's actually, towards the business, then there's no question. So if you get audited, you show it, then you're done. Whereas, if you just have just a line item on your credit card or bank statement, you could get audited. And if they ask you to back it out, you owe a lot of money if you claimed a lot of those expenses.
Now, there's some people that probably have the misconception that, I've been in business for 5 years. I've been in business for 10 years. I don't have a single receipt. It's too late to start now.
Ooh, yeah, that's tough. So I say it's never too late. Always start. Start today. It's easy. We've got phones. There's actually apps. There's companies out there where you could just snap a picture, of your receipt and then upload it to your cloud server, have a backup system so that 3-5 years from now, if somebody comes and asks you for it, you've got a place where you can go straight to have documentation of your receipts, but it's never too late to start. All
right. So, those are some of the things that I think everybody starting from day one can take in and apply to their business. It's simple. It just takes a few moments. Now let's talk about actually knowing what to do with these numbers, right? And knowing how to track this, because there's some businesses and people that I call it, I guess, checkbook accounting. Let me just look at my ledger. That'll tell me how I'm doing.
Oh, yes. Ooh, yeah, I cringe.
And I'm sure that's probably, how common is that? You probably see that more than most.
Oh, I see that all the time. People say, oh, let me just go look at let me just pull up my bank account balance and see how much I have. Okay, that sounds great. I can go purchase this, $500 thing for the business. And they don't realize that there might be some annual dues or some annual subscription, like your website hosting. A lot of people, they buy into that, pay for 3 years straight and, you get a discount. Well, then on that fourth year, when it comes to renew, a lot of people forget. And so then that big chunk of money comes out and they're not expecting it. And, your account bounces. So yes, it's never a good idea to just look at your balance.
And I guess that's the thing. How difficult it is to create something where you can look at a snapshot of a business, because it sounds easier said than done. And I know there's people that, rather than forecasting. Let me take a look at where I am and let me figure out what I can budget to spend. They do, like you said, let me look at my bank statement. Oh yeah, the money's in there. I guess I'm okay to spend this. What's the difficult level or where's the obstacle in being able to actually have a snapshot of your business to know that, that this may not be a great purchase right now, or this is something that I should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, great question. There's two things. One, doing the budget ahead of time. So knowing, kind of having a good idea of what your operating expenses are on a monthly basis. Two, I actually also, one of my biggest things that I encourage all my clients to do and everyone to do is have a cash cushion. So have enough that if there was something that you missed, that you're covered, that you've got the cash flow in there. And three, there's tools, there's definitely tools out there. Like I've got tools where it's easy. You plug it in and it's, you can download transactions and you plug it in and you can actually see quickly, how much you've spent or how much you're going to be spending. There's also some great tools out there. I know QuickBooks is one of the ones that everybody kind of hears about. But sometimes QuickBooks is actually over engineered for a lot of small business owners, especially when they're starting out. So when they hear about it or they see about it, they get discouraged. I actually had a small business client who spent almost $1,000 on training and classes trying to understand QuickBooks to just at the end of the day outsource it to someone. So there's tools. One of my favorite tools is a tool called FreshBooks. It's nice and easy. It just kind of aggregates any of your debits and credits coming in, and you can quickly see and forecast what your expenses are.
And I guess that's where a lot of people, they do go out and jump on whatever they hear about. Well, I hear people are using this. That's what I should be using. Right. And I guess no tool is good if it's too frustrating to use. Right.
Absolutely. And also some of these tools you have to understand. I help my clients actually walk through and understand what's their business model, what's their pricing model, how often are they, invoicing and billing clients, because based on those answers, and if they have inventory, that actually will steer them towards different tools, because not each tool actually encompasses everything. So you want to have somebody that has that experience that can tell you, based off your business, based off your experience, or based off how you like to interact with the numbers, here's the tool that, you should check out first.
Yeah. And I guess when you can look at your business with that, and I know it's almost impossible for so many people to objectively look at their business, right? Because they're so emotionally attached to their business. And a lot of times they may not recognize. Do you see or have a way to get people to step outside? Because some people will say, oh, look, that's where my money's going. But you may be able to look at it and say, no, that's actually where your money is coming from. That expense is making you money versus this expense is leaking money. Did you see that's tough for people to clearly identify those?
Yes. I mean, one of the things that I help people, a lot of people come up with their pricing. They kind of put a swag out there. They say, oh, here's what my competition's doing here. I'm going to just put this number out there. And so, like you said, it's hard to be objective because they're scared. They don't want to have a premium price because they feel like their competition, no one's going to buy from them. But they don't realize that, they have to look at themselves. They have to look at their business operating expenses and figure out, does this pricing model make sense? One of the things that I do, I walk through the customers and to have them actually walk through a scenario from beginning to end to tell me how they're bringing in the cash, what the expenses are coming out from delivering their products and services. And often they're finding either the product that they were selling, they're actually losing money on. And so it's something that they thought they had to deliver, but it actually was costing them time and money, or B, they're undercharging for their services and they thought they were trying to give a premium product. And so they were actually causing confusion in the marketplace because they weren't charging a premium price. And so
actually, the more they sell, the more the money they're losing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the misconception. A lot of folks think that, the numbers don't look good. I'm not making as much money. I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to double down. I'm going to sell more products. I'm going to, work with more clients. And they don't realize that sometimes depending on what their pricing model is and what their expenses are, they're actually losing money. So the more that they're working or more products they're selling, they're actually putting themselves into more debt.
Well, one thing that I think we absolutely have to talk about is that word cash flow.
Oh, yes.
Because it's something that, I try to talk to my kids and explain my kids cash flow, how businesses that make no money can still pay people, right? And then how businesses who on paper look like they're just, fantastic, can be shut down, in a moment because of cash flow. So what are the big misconceptions around cash flow? Because I know there's people that say, "Oh, I'm doing great. Look at my receivables," and but that doesn't receivables. I guess they can, but really you can't go out and buy dinner with receivables, right?
Correct. And, I worked with two small business owners that they were bringing in $100,000 in sales each year. I mean, from the outside, they appeared to have a very profitable business. They had a 3-story home. They had been, making $100,000 in sales with one of their big clients for almost 5 years. And at the end of the day, they had zero cash flow. I mean, they were taking money, what we were talking about earlier, they were taking money and borrowing from the business to pay for their personal expenses. So just because it looks like you're bringing in a lot of sales and bringing in a lot of cash, really ultimately at the end of the day, what matters is the profit, what you have left over after you pay expenses, after you pay employees, and honestly, after you pay yourself. That's actually one of the biggest things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't factor in when they're thinking through their cost of goods sold is they don't actually factor in themselves. While you may not put that on like an accounting statement or something to your CPA, you still have to figure in you're in business to make money. This isn't a hobby, right? Like you need to factor yourself in as an expense and figure out how much do you want the business to pay yourself.
I think that's a great point, and I think that's probably something that so many people miss. And when you talk about like the example you gave, I guess there's a lot of broke millionaires out there. And how many business owners do you see that look at their business as, here's something I do, because I know it's easier said than done. I absolutely do. But they look at their business as something that I need to spend my time. I need to work hard. And if there's anything left over, that's what I'll get. And where's the flaw in that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Great thing. Great question. It's again, when you work your numbers, it's the predicting your financial success. And it starts from the very beginning where you're analyzing, you're looking at your pricing, you're looking at all your costs, and you're putting yourself in there as a cost. Because if you don't start it from day one, 5 years from now, you could still not be profitable. So if you're not planning for that up front, it's really hard to get out from under the weeds when you're, busy with doing everything as a small business owner and all the hats that we have to wear. It's really difficult to step up and start realizing, oh, well, the last 5 years, I actually haven't been making any money. So I have many small business owners who come to me and they start realizing, oh, I've been in business for 3 to 5 years. Why am I not making the profits?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, it's almost turns into a jail sentence for some of them because they can't walk away, or they feel like it's not something they can walk away, but they don't know how to fix it. And oftentimes, I guess it's one area. Do you find that there's one area that they're missing that they could easily fix that changes things? I know you talked about selling. There's a big difference between selling and collecting, right? Your invoices, right? So you can sell something, but you got to collect the money, I guess, before you can actually bank it. But what do you see as that one thing that people miss or they ignore? They put their head in the sand of what needs to be done that could resolve some issues more easily than they may think.
Great question, Jack. Like you said, I think going into the collecting money to stay in business, a lot of folks, like you said, they sell their products and then they don't have a process that they're following up and making sure they get paid. I see a lot of people who they haven't even thought through what their invoicing and payment system is going to look like. So you want to make it as easy as possible for customers to pay you. You don't want to say, oh, well, I only take cash or check because I don't have a process set up. I don't have a credit card reader, or I don't want to pay the credit card fees. I mean, honestly, that's the way of doing business. And you want to make sure your customers have a way to pay you. And two, for a lot of these companies, one way to shift it around, especially if you're spending a lot of money up front on inventory to create your products, one way to shift it around is to, require a deposit from a customer up front. There's ways that you can build in how you do your pricing and how you collect payments so that you can be profitable where you're not fronting and taking up all the expenses and waiting 3, 6 months, 30, 60, 90 days to collect on the money. So that's one area I definitely see folks don't follow up on. And, if you're not following up on a customer and it's been, 3 months since you've invoiced them, they're not going to just magically come and say, oh, wait, I forgot I owed you money. Let me go pay it. Like, you have to have a process to follow up with that.
Sylvia, one thing that I find that why I consider you an influencer, and I think that makes you very, very different than a lot of folks that I've met in the bookkeeping, accounting, industry is that you have, I guess, if you were a doctor, I would say you had great bedside manner in that you seem to understand the psychological and emotional aspects of this, where a lot of people just jump right into the numbers. Well, here, no, you got to do this. Where's your receipt? You need to do this. You need to do this. But you understand that there's a psychological side to this and an emotional side to this. And I think that keeps a lot of people from seeking help is whether it's embarrassment or their lack of organization to, that they've had so far. And they just say, I can't show someone how inefficient or just how bad I am at this side of it. I need to at least fix a few things first before I see someone. What do you have to say to someone that they recognize they're in trouble? They recognize that things need to be done, but they do have that embarrassment or just lack of confidence in going to seek someone. But also they're experiencing a high level of stress and probably can't make logical decisions about this right now.
Yes, that's a great point. I see folks that, they are afraid. They're afraid to seek help. They're embarrassed. They don't know where to start. So they just don't even raise their hand. And so I work with my clients. I work with where they're at. So if someone says to me they've never done a budget before, I'm not going to just send them a spreadsheet and say, fill this out before I meet with you next. It's, hey, let's work on this together. I'll talk through it with you. Great example. I had a client last week who, was scared, didn't want to come to the meeting and said, hey, I haven't put together the homework that you gave to me. So let's just cancel. Let's just reschedule this. And so I said, well, walk me through what's going on. She's like, all of this is just too overwhelming. I don't understand it. I don't even know where to start with this. And so I said, you know what, that's great. I said, that's fine. I said, well, let's walk through it together. I will help you. And I said, step by step. And she said, oh, well, in that case, well, then, yeah, let's meet. I would love for you to help me go through this. And we did, Jack. We went through line by line. I mean, it was me kind of interviewing and questioning and saying, hey, have you thought about this? Is this something that you have to pay for? And ultimately, when she looked at the final number, she was amazed because she said she never thought about thinking about these expenses in this way. And when she looked at the bottom number, she would have never come up with the number by herself.
And I think the way that you described it, the way you did do that without, and again, this is a very real fear for people, without judgment on what they've done. It's like, no, this is where you are. Let's get through it rather than judge how poorly you've been doing it. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And to me, that's so important. And I think what really made me realize this is when, I want to bring up your book, the Small Business Finance for the Busy Entrepreneur. And generally when I look, and I like to look at financial books and look at, and a lot of them are fairly dry and very, they're numbers, right?
Yes,
right?
They are. They are.
Well, let me see here. I pretend like I know something about the Diggets, right?
Yeah.
And what struck me with your book, was right from the beginning, the introduction, chapter of your book. It is the furthest thing from being number crunching and finger wagging. It has a very human, element to it. And it struck me right off the bat that this is someone that can help a lot of people, not just in their financial problems, but get past the emotional and that fear of judgment. Can you talk a little about, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but give us kind of run through of that story that you tell in the introduction of the book.
Sure, of course. So, again, you mentioned the introduction. This was actually kind of the motivation behind a lot of why I started my business and wrote this book. I was working with two small business owners. I got tasked with helping them figure out their business for 2 weeks. I mean, I was staying up till 2 a.m., running off of probably less than 4 hours of sleep a night because I had a stack of, bank statements, credit card statements, outstanding bills that I had to go through. I found that they, made the number one mistake that I tell everybody not to do, which is commingling their personal and business assets. So they were using their business, of course, to pay for things like their mortgage and groceries. They were college graduates. They were very highly educated. They had a consulting business. They were making $100,000 in sales each year. They even had a CPA telling them what to do. But, honestly, one, they weren't following all the CPA's advice. And two, the CPA wasn't digging into the details of their numbers, which is something that I did. And I found that actually one of their employees had been embezzling funds for months, thousands of dollars. And they had no idea. They just thought, oh, well, we should still have money. We know that we're getting paid really well from our client. And when I showed them the numbers and I said, you're at risk of bankruptcy. You're at risk of almost foreclosing your home because you're not going to be able to pay the mortgage by the way, because your money has been mingled here, you're potentially at risk for an IRS audit and fine if you're accidentally claiming personal expenses as a business expense. So honestly, these two business owners, I worked with them. We worked together. They took all my recommendations. They sold their 3-story home that they had. They were willing to, live minimally. And they actually did come out from it after a year. They were able to, buy their dream retirement home. But honestly, 2 years later, more things came up because they didn't fully put in all the business practices that I had recommended. They ended up using up all their life savings in less than 6 months. Yes. So, and they thought that money was going to last them at least 10 years. So that's a big difference. What we think is going to last 10 years and only lasting 6 months. So they did. Unfortunately, while they were successful in doing their business, they ended up having to close their business. They sold their retirement home and they started all over again at the age of 63.
My goodness. And so I guess seeing this is you clearly have the capacity to help people with this. That's what brought you to create the programs to get people past this, or to help them get through these times and avoid this happening to others.
Yes, absolutely. I use this experience with working with these clients as well as similar clients. And I decided to write my book. This book is really all the key lessons so that no one else will fall into the same trap. Because there's statistics, there are all different statistics out there, but there's one that says, 50% of small business owners fail within the first year. And that breaks my heart. Especially when it's for reasons that could be avoided.
Right. I think when people hear that, they think, oh, it's a restaurant. They didn't have good food. They didn't have good service. Right. In actuality, they may have had great food and great service, but they just weren't good at the finance.
Correct. And not having a solid foundation to start off of. So absolutely. And that's where it breaks my heart when I see that. I see people where their products and services are so needed, but they can't afford to be in business by themselves. And they, shut down and go back and get a regular job. For things like we talked about, just even cash flow. I actually had a blogger that, earlier this month, she had talked about how she was one day at risk of going back and looking for a regular job because she didn't have any money left because she had been sick for almost 10 days. She was sick and hadn't gone to work. And so because she was a freelancer and worked for herself, she wasn't getting paid during that whole time she was taking time off. And so I hate to hear when someone's great at their job and they can't afford to keep doing it because they didn't save and they didn't account for, cash flow or account for vacation days or sick days when they built their business. Because a lot of us, when we're employees, we don't think about that. We go to corporate America and they, take care and have the great benefits package. But when we start our own business, we forget that we are the employer. We have to price and figure out everything, including sick days and vacation days for ourselves.
Let's say I am a small business owner. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm listening to this and thinking, I know something needs to be done. It's gotten out of hand. But you know what? I feel it's just too disorganized. It's highly stressful. But there's no way that I can go and actually talk to someone about this right now. I just don't feel like that I'm ready, or I'm not prepared for the judgment or for people to say, hey, shame on you. Because the last thing a lot of times, what they don't want to hear is, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. We can't help you. You have really royally screwed up. Right. Yeah. They don't want to hear that. They want to avoid hear that. What can they get? And I feel pretty solid about this because I think it's a great book. What will your book do for those folks to maybe open up their mind about that there is hope, or there is a way to get past this? What can they find out in the book to move them towards what they need to be doing?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. Yes. And I think to your point, exactly. Some people, they're not ready. They're not ready for the judgment. They're not ready to talk to someone. So a book is, it's a safe, easy solution. The way that I wrote my book is it's super simple. You can jump straight to the area that you're having problems with. So each chapter is pretty much self-contained, where you can just go figure out what you're having problems with and go straight to it. There's examples. There's like real life customer and client stories in there to show why it's important. It's there. I walk you through action items. I even provide templates and say, hey, here's some things so you don't even have to recreate from recreate from scratch. I'm giving you the template. I'm giving you the action items. I'm giving you the order in which you should go about and do these things. And those are the quick wins. Like find the couple two things that you're having problems with and start following the instructions, following the action item steps. And doing that will, one, help you feel organized, and two, help save time and money, honestly. So once you start moving in that direction, once you tackle one thing and you save that time and money in that area, that frees up yourself from, and being able to tackle something else and stop, and once you tackle one thing, like that's where the overwhelm, I think, comes from, when you don't know where to start and think that you have to come up with it all by yourself.
All right. So we've talked a lot about people that have been in business and maybe have made mistakes. They're digging themselves into a hole, or they are finally recognizing that they're just not good at finances. But what about people that are aspiring entrepreneurs? They're thinking about starting a business, with shows like The Profit and Shark Tank. A lot of people are thinking about going out there and starting a business. Are there things that you talk about that will be beneficial from someone that hasn't started to help avoid these types of mistakes?
Yes, great question, Jack. I actually have a perfect example. I get asked to present to a group of small business aspiring entrepreneurs creating their business plan. And I actually did a recent presentation where the entrepreneur, I was talking about the importance of cash flow, saying, you increase your flexibility, your options by having enough cash in your business. And, don't assume that business debt is normal. We think some folks believe, oh, well, it's not okay in your personal life, but every business has to have a debt. It's okay. Let's go get that business loan. And there's a misconception that, businesses have to start off with debt, and you don't have to. And so when I delivered this presentation, I actually the very next day got an email from one of the participants, and she was, weeks away from starting her business. And she emailed me and said, "Thank you so much for your presentation." She said, "I completely revisited my business plan, and by changing one thing based off of you inspiring me, the fact that businesses don't have to start off with debt." She said that I saved her $50,000 in her first year of business.
That is remarkable because so many people do think, or it's like an automatic excuse. Well, I got to have all this stuff before I get started. I have to, get this loan and buy all this stuff. But, I think anyone that can steer people, away from that is, doing them a huge favor. So do you go over some of that stuff in your book, for people that are about to start a business?
Yes, I do. I talk through about the cash flow and again, making sure you understand what your startup expenses are and your operating expenses and, making sure, and this particular client story is actually in the book. And, a lot of people think that you have to start off as a brick and mortar business to start, that you have to be a legitimate business and, sign that $2,000 a month lease. And, again, this aspiring entrepreneur, she took my advice and she actually, when she switched her business model, she decided to go mobile first and make it a mobile business and until she built up her customer base. And she's doing fantastic now. And like I said, she's saving $50,000 in just her first year of business alone.
I would encourage anyone that feels like they're at a place where they're stuck, they need to do something. If they just don't feel like they can move, they should at least move enough to pick up this book, because I think this really has some life-changing information in it. And that's why I truly feel that you are an influencer, because you're going to make a huge impact on small businesses. And it's something that's not talked about that often. How can people find out? Or one, how can people get a copy of your book? And two, how can people find out more about Sylvia Inks and what you're doing?
Yes. So you can find my book on Amazon. It's called Small Business Finance for the Busy Entrepreneur. So you can find that on Amazon. I'm on Facebook at SMI Financial Coaching. My Twitter handle is at SMI Financial. And my websites, I've got my book website, which is smallbusinessfinancebook.com, as well as my company site, which is smifinancialcoaching.com.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get those links up on the show post, but I can't recommend highly enough Small Business Finance for the Busy Entrepreneur, Blueprint for Building a Solid, Profitable Business. Sylvia, thanks so much for coming on today and talking with us about this, because it really is something that you don't hear a lot about, or you hear it in a very dry, sterile manner. And I just love the way that you are doing this and helping folks with this.
Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you for having me. I look forward to every business becoming and remaining profitable.
All right, folks, there you have it. Definitely check out Small Business Finance for the Busy Entrepreneur on Amazon. We'll have a link to that on the show post, but also her SMI Financial Coaching. And until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.